First contact crisis. The U.S. Dauntless hung silently in the inky void of deep space, its sleek hull gleaming under the light of unfamiliar stars. Captain Alina Sato stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling nebula that filled the main view screen. After 6 months of pushing the experimental warship to its limits, they'd finally reached the edge of unexplored space. Status report, Commander Chen. Sato ordered, her voice calm but edged with anticipation. Her first officer, a wiry man with salt and pepper hair, consulted his holographic display. All systems nominal, Captain. The quantum drive is cooling down after the last jump. We should be ready for another leap in about 4 hours. Sato nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The Dauntless was humanity's crowning achievement, a warship capable of crossing vast stretches of space in the blink of an eye. It was a testament to human ingenuity, born from the fusion of multiple scientific breakthroughs. Any signs of intelligent life out here? Sato asked, turning to her sensor officer. Lieutenant Zara Okoi, a young woman with close-cropped hair and dark skin, shook her head. Nothing yet, Captain. But there's a lot of interference from the nebula. It's possible. A shrill alarm cut through the air, causing the entire bridge crew to jump. Report. Sato barked, all traces of relaxation vanishing from her posture. Okoi's fingers flew across her console. Multiple ships just appeared on sensors, Captain. They came out of nowhere. Some kind of stealth tech we've never seen before. The main view screen shifted, showing a cluster of sleek, predatory-looking vessels emerging from the nebula. Their hulls seemed to shimmer and bend the light around them, making them difficult to focus on. Are they aware of us? Sato asked, her mind racing through possible scenarios. I don't think so, Chen replied. Their stealth tech might work both ways, hiding them from us, but also blocking their own sensors. Sato was about to order the ship to battle stations when Okoi called out again. Captain, I'm picking up another ship, much smaller. It looks like it's trying to evade the others. The view screen zoomed in on a battered vessel, roughly a third the size of the Dauntless. Its hull was scorched and pockmarked with damage. As they watched, emerald beams lashed out from the pursuing ships, barely missing the fleeing craft. Life signs? Sato asked, her voice tight. Okoi nodded. Definitely. Not human, but they're alive. And in danger. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The Dauntless's mission was one of exploration and scientific discovery, not military intervention. They had no idea who these aliens were or what the conflict was about. For all they knew, the smaller ship could be a criminal fleeing justice. But as another volley of energy beams narrowly missed the damaged vessel, Sato felt a familiar fire ignite in her chest. She hadn't joined Starfleet to stand by and watch the strong prey on the weak. Battle stations, she ordered, her voice ringing with authority. Bring weapons online and plot an intercept course. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Warning klaxons blared as crew members rushed to their posts. The deck hummed beneath their feet as the Dauntless's powerful engines roared to life. Are you sure about this, Captain? Chen asked quietly, stepping close to Sato's chair. We're about to involve ourselves in an alien conflict we know nothing about. Sato met his gaze steadily. No, I'm not sure. But I am sure that I won't sit back and watch a slaughter. We'll do what we can to defuse the situation peacefully. But if that fails, she let the implication hang in the air. Chen nodded, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. Aye, Captain. Weapons are hot, and we're on an intercept course. We'll be in range in 30 seconds. As the Dauntless closed in, Sato studied the alien ships intently. The pursuers were clearly more advanced. Their energy weapons and stealth technology outclassed anything humanity had developed. But there was something predatory, almost cruel in their design that set Sato's teeth on edge. Open a channel to all ships, Sato ordered. Let's see if we can talk our way out of this. The communications officer nodded, and Sato took a deep breath. Attention, unknown vessels. This is Captain Elena Sato of the U.S. Dauntless. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration from Earth. We request that you cease your attack on the smaller vessel immediately. Please respond." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, a harsh, guttural voice filled the bridge, its words translated by the ship's advanced linguistics computer. "This is none of your concern, Earth creature. The Carcal submit to no one. Leave now, or be destroyed with the Telari vermin." The transmission cut off abruptly. Sato's jaw tightened as she processed the threat. "Well," she said grimly, "I guess that answers the question of who the aggressors are. Tactical status of the Exarchal ships." The tactical officer, a burly man named Sergeant Gunnarsson, responded crisply. 5 vessels, Captain. 4 escorts and 1 larger ship, probably their command vessel. Energy readings suggest their weapons are far more powerful than ours." Sato nodded, her mind working furiously. They were outgunned and facing an unknown enemy. But humanity hadn't come this far by backing down from a challenge. "All right, people, listen up," she said, her voice carrying across the tense bridge. "We may be outgunned, but we're not outmatched. The Dauntless has a few tricks up her sleeve, and more importantly, we have the element of surprise. These Exarchal don't know what we're capable of." She turned to her tactical officer. "Sergeant, I want you to prepare a spread of quantum torpedoes. We'll use the nebula's interference to mask their approach. Target their engines and weapons systems. We want to disable, not destroy." "Aye, Captain," Gunnarsson replied, a wolfish grin spreading across his face. "Helm, plot a series of evasive maneuvers. Use the nebula for cover when you can. We need to keep them guessing." The helmsman, a young ensign named Tara Reeves, nodded confidently. "They won't know what hit them, Captain." Sato allowed herself a small smile. This was what humans did best: adapting, improvising, and overcoming impossible odds. "All right, let's show these Exarchal what happens when you threaten the wrong species. Helm, take us in. Weapons, fire on my mark." The Dauntless surged forward, its advanced hull plates shimmering as they absorbed and redirected enemy scans. The Exarchal ships, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of an unknown vessel, scrambled to regroup. As they closed the distance, Sato watched the tactical display intently. The Telari ship was limping badly, its engines flickering as it struggled to maintain speed. They had to act fast. "Now," Sato commanded. The Dauntless unleashed a barrage of quantum torpedoes, their brilliant blue contrails cutting through the nebula's swirling gases. At the same instant, Ensign Reeves sent the ship into a series of wild evasive maneuvers, making it nearly impossible for the Exarchal to get a target lock. The torpedoes struck home with pinpoint accuracy. 2 of the Exarchal escort ships immediately went dark, their engines and weapons disabled. The command ship took a glancing blow, causing it to list to one side. But the aliens recovered quickly. A hail of emerald energy beams lashed out, several impacting the Dauntless's shields with bone-jarring force. "Shields at 60%. Chen called out. "Those weapons pack a punch, Captain." Sato gripped her chair's armrests, her knuckles white. "Evasive pattern Delta. Bring us around for another pass. We need to keep their attention on us, and away from the Telari ship." As the battle raged, Sato couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in her crew and her ship. They were facing a technologically superior foe, and yet they were holding their own. It was a testament to human determination and ingenuity. But she knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to end this quickly, before the Exarchal could bring their full firepower to bear. "Tactical status on the enemy command ship?" she asked. Gunnarsson studied his display intently. "Their shields are weakening, Captain. One more good hit, and we might be able to disable their main weapons array." Sato nodded, a plan forming in her mind. It was risky, but they were out of options. "Helm, plot a course directly for the command ship. Full impulse." The bridge crew turned to stare at her in shock. "Captain?" Chen asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "You're not suggesting?" "Oh yes, I am, Commander," Sato replied, a fierce grin on her face. "We're going to play a little game of chicken." As the Dauntless rocketed towards the massive exarchal vessel, Sato could feel the tension on the bridge ratcheting up with each passing second. But she kept her eyes fixed on the viewscreen, watching as the alien ship grew larger and larger. "Steady," she murmured, more to herself than to her crew. "Steady." At the last possible moment, Sato barked out her order. "Now, full reverse thrusters and fire everything we've got." The Dauntless shuddered as its engines reversed, bringing the ship to a bone-jarring halt mere kilometers from the exarchal command ship. At the same instant, every weapon on the human vessel opened fire, unleashing a devastating point-blank barrage. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The exarchal ship's shields collapsed under the onslaught, and secondary explosions blossomed across its hull. Its weapons went dark, and it began to drift listlessly. A ragged cheer went up from the Dauntless's crew. They had done it. They had faced down a superior force and emerged victorious. But Sato knew their work wasn't done yet. "Status of the Telluri ship?" she asked. "Still intact, Captain," Okoi reported. "But their life support is failing. They won't last much longer without help." Sato nodded, prepared to bring them aboard. It's time we properly introduced ourselves to our new alien friends. As the Dauntless moved to rescue the Telluri, Sato couldn't help but reflect on the magnitude of what had just occurred. Humanity had just fought its first interstellar battle, and won. They had proven themselves on a galactic stage. But more importantly, they had stayed true to their principles. They had risked everything to protect a species they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. Whatever came next, diplomatic relations, technological exchange, or further conflict, Sato knew one thing for certain. Humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. The adventure was just beginning. Outgunned but not outmatched. The aftermath of the battle was a flurry of activity aboard the U.S. Dauntless. As the ship's medical team rushed to prepare for their alien guests, Captain Alina Sato stood in the shuttle bay, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They were about to make first contact with not one, but two alien species, though under less than ideal circumstances. The bay doors slid open, revealing the battered Telluri vessel. It was smaller than Sato had initially thought, its sleek design marred by scorch marks and hull breaches. As the ship settled onto the deck, Sato couldn't help but marvel at the fact that it had survived the exarchal onslaught at all. With a hiss of escaping atmosphere, a hatch on the alien craft cracked open. Sato held her breath as a figure emerged, and then blinked in surprise. The Telluri were beautiful. There was no other word for it. The alien that stepped out was roughly humanoid, but with an ethereal quality that took Sato's breath away. Its skin shimmered with an iridescent sheen, and large, almond-shaped eyes regarded the humans with a mixture of fear and wonder. "Welcome aboard the Dauntless," Sato said, stepping forward with her hands held open in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm Captain Alina Sato. We're here to help." The Telluri's eyes widened, and it made a series of musical chirps and trills. The universal translator in Sato's ear buzzed as it worked to decipher the alien language. "I thank you," came the halting translation. "I am Zinla, emissary of the Telluri Concordat. You saved us from the exarchal." "Why?" Sato smiled warmly. "Because it was the right thing to do. We couldn't stand by and watch you be destroyed." Zinla's shimmering form seemed to ripple with emotion. "Such nobility. The exarchal said your kind were savages, barely out of your stellar cradle. But they were wrong." Before Sato could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, to the bridge. The exarchal ships are powering up. They're preparing to attack." Sato's smile vanished. Looks like we're not out of the woods yet, she muttered. Turning to Zinla, she asked, can you tell us anything about the Xarcal's capabilities? Any weaknesses we can exploit? The Telari emissary's form rippled again, this time with what Seto interpreted as determination. I will assist in any way I can. The Xarcal are scavengers, pirates who steal technology from other races. Their ships are a patchwork of stolen systems. Formidable, but not always well integrated. Sato nodded sharply. That's something we can work with. Come with me to the bridge. We're going to need all the help we can get. As they raced through the ship's corridors, Seto's mind whirled with possibilities. They were still outgunned, but now they had insider knowledge. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was finding creative solutions to impossible problems. They burst onto the bridge just as the view screen lit up with emerald fire. The remaining Xarcal ships had regrouped and were launching a furious assault. Evasive maneuvers, Seto barked, sliding into her command chair. Tactical, return fire. Target their weapons arrays. The Dauntless shuddered under the impact of multiple energy beams. Sparks flew from a nearby console as power fluctuated throughout the ship. Shields at 40% and dropping, Chen reported grimly. We can't take much more of this, Captain. Sato turned to Zinla, who was staring at the tactical display with wide, frightened eyes. You said their systems aren't well integrated. Can we use that against them? The Telari emissary shittered rapidly, the translator struggling to keep up. Yes. They're shield harmonics. They fluctuate wildly to compensate for the mismatched systems. If you could exploit that. Seto's eyes lit up. Lieutenant Okoi, scan for shield frequency fluctuations in the Xarcal ships. Sergeant Gunnarsson, prepare to modulate our weapons to match those frequencies. We're going to punch right through their defenses. As her crew scrambled to implement the plan, Seto felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. This was humanity at its best, adapting on the fly, turning weakness into strength. Got it, Okoi called out, transmitting shield frequencies to tactical now. Gunnarsson's fingers flew over his console. Weapons modulated and ready, Captain. Just say the word. Sato leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on the attacking Xarcal ships. Fire. A barrage of quantum torpedoes and phaser fire erupted from the Dauntless, each weapon perfectly tuned to slip through the gaps in the Xarcal shields. The effect was devastating. Explosions blossomed across the alien vessels as critical systems were hit with pinpoint accuracy. But the Xarcal weren't going down without a fight. A massive energy buildup registered on the Dauntless's sensors moments before a blinding beam of destructive force lashed out. Braced for impact, Sato yelled. The beam struck the Dauntless head-on. The ship bucked wildly, and for a heart-stopping moment, Seto thought they were done for. But when the chaos subsided, they were still in one piece. Barely. Status report, she demanded, coughing through the acrid smoke that filled the bridge. Shields are down, Chen replied, his voice tight with pain. A piece of shrapnel had caught him in the arm. Multiple hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We're venting atmosphere. Sato's mind raced. They had hurt the Xarcal, but not enough. And now the Dauntless was crippled, a sitting duck for the next attack. They needed a game-changer, and fast. That's when inspiration struck. The quantum drive, she breathed. Zinla, you said the Xarcal systems are a patchwork, right? Not designed to work together. The Telari nodded, its shimmering form flickering with confusion. Yes, but I don't see. Trust me, Seto cut in. She turned to her chief engineer, who had just arrived on the bridge. Lieutenant Kumar, I need you to rig the quantum drive to emit a massive burst of chronotin particles. Can you do it? Kumar's eyes widened as he realized what she was planning. It's possible, Captain, but it would fry the drive. We'd be stranded here. Sato met his gaze steadily. Better stranded than dead. Make it happen. As Kumar raced off to engineering, Sato addressed the rest of her crew. This is going to be close. When I give the word, I want every scrap of power we have left diverted to structural integrity and life support. We're about to weather one hell of a storm." The next few minutes were a blur of frantic activity. Kumar's voice crackled over the comm, reporting that the quantum drive was ready. The exarchal ships closed in for the kill, their weapons charging for a final devastating salvo. "Now," Sato ordered. A blinding flash erupted from the Dauntless as the quantum drive released its payload of chronoton particles. The wave of temporal energy washed over the exarchal ships like a tsunami. Their mismatched systems, never designed to handle such an assault, went haywire. Shields collapsed, weapons misfired, and in 2 cases, warp cores breached in spectacular explosions. In the span of a heartbeat, the tables had turned. The remaining exarchal ships drifted lifelessly, their systems in chaos. A ragged cheer went up from the dauntless crew. Against all odds, they had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. But Sato knew their troubles were far from over. The Dauntless was crippled, stranded in unknown space. They had made powerful enemies in the exarchal, and they had revealed humanity's existence to the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. As she gazed out at the starfield, now littered with the debris of battle, Sato couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. They had won the day through human ingenuity and determination, but the real challenge lay ahead. How would humanity navigate the complex web of galactic politics? What other threats lurked in the depths of space? And how would Earth react to the news that they were no longer alone in the universe? One thing was certain. The U.S. Dauntless and her crew had written themselves into the history books. Whatever came next, they would face it together, with the same spirit that had carried them through this impossible battle. The stars beckoned, filled with both promise and peril, and humanity, represented by this small but mighty crew, was ready to answer the call. Diplomatic dance. The days following the battle with the exarchal were a whirlwind of activity aboard the U.S. Dauntless. As the crew worked tirelessly to repair their battered ship, Captain Alina Sato found herself thrust into the unfamiliar role of diplomat. The Telari emissary, Zinla, had been in near-constant communication with its homeworld. News of the human intervention had spread like wildfire through the local sector of space, sparking intense debate and no small amount of concern among the established galactic powers. Sato stood in her ready room, staring out at the stars as she processed the latest update from Zinla. A delegation from the Galactic Concord, a loose alliance of spacefaring races, was en route to meet with them. It was humanity's first official introduction to the wider galactic community, and the stakes couldn't be higher. A chime at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Commander Chen stepped in, his arm still in a sling from the battle. "Captain, the Telari ship is ready for departure. Zinla is requesting a final meeting before they leave." Sato nodded, straightening her uniform. "Thank you, Commander. I'll be right there." As they walked to the conference room, Chen spoke quietly. "Captain, are you sure about this? Sending the Telari away before the Concord delegates arrive?" "We don't have a choice," Sato replied, her voice tight. "The Telari are technically a protectorate of the Concord. If they're here when the delegates arrive, it could be seen as us trying to influence negotiations through them. We need to approach this with clean hands." Chen nodded, though he didn't look entirely convinced. "And what about the exarchal prisoners?" Sato's jaw tightened. In the aftermath of the battle, they had taken aboard the survivors from the disabled exarchal ships. It was the humane thing to do, but it had also saddled them with a potential powder keg. "We'll turn them over to the Concord. Let them deal with their own criminals." They entered the conference room to find Zinla waiting, its iridescent form shimmering with barely contained emotion. "Captain Sato," the Telari emissary trilled, the translator rendering its musical speech into crisp English. "I cannot express the depth of our gratitude for what you and your crew have done." Sato smiled warmly. "You don't need to thank us, Zinla. We did what any decent sentience would do." The Telluri's form rippled in what Sado had come to recognize as their equivalent of a headshake. "You underestimate the rarity of such nobility in this galaxy, Captain. The Concord, they mean well, but they are bound by treaties and non-intervention policies. They would have debated while my people burned." Zinla's large eyes fixed on Sado with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Humanity has made a grand entrance onto the galactic stage, Captain. Many will fear you for your strength and your willingness to act, but know that you have allies in the Telluri Concordat. When the time comes, we will stand with you." Sado felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. In trying to do the right thing, they had inadvertently entangled themselves in the complex web of galactic politics. "Thank you, Zinla. I hope that when we meet again, it will be under more peaceful circumstances." As the Telluri ship departed, Sado couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. They were about to dive into waters far deeper and more treacherous than anything they had faced before. Hours later, the Dauntless's sensors picked up the approach of the Concord delegation. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their designs as varied as the races that crewed them. Sado stood in the shuttle bay, flanked by her senior staff, as the delegates disembarked. The diversity of sentient life on display was staggering. There was a towering insectoid being with multifaceted eyes and gleaming carapace, a short, stocky creature that seemed to be made of living stone, and a willowy, almost translucent humanoid that floated inches above the ground. The insectoid stepped forward, mandibles clicking. "I am Sixtal, lead arbiter of the Galactic Concord. We have come to assess the situation and determine humanity's place in the greater galactic community." Sado bowed slightly, hoping the gesture translated across species. "Welcome aboard the Dauntless, Arbiter Sixtal. I'm Captain Alina Sado. We're honored to receive you." The stone-like being rumbled, its voice like gravel in a tumbler. "Honor. You have upset the balance of power in this sector, human. Your actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, have far-reaching consequences." "Peace, Grohl," the floating being said, its voice a soothing whisper. "Let us not judge before we have heard their full account." It turned to Sado, eyes like swirling galaxies regarding her curiously. "I am Lysithea of the Aether Collective. We are most interested in hearing your perspective on recent events." As Sado led the delegates to the conference room, she felt like she was walking a tightrope. One wrong move, one misinterpreted word, could spell disaster for humanity's future in the galaxy. The next several hours were a grueling test of Sado's diplomatic skills. The delegates grilled her on every aspect of the encounter with the Xarkal, Earth's technological capabilities, and humanity's intentions in galactic affairs. "You must understand our concern," Sixtal chittered. "A previously unknown species suddenly appears, wielding weaponry capable of defeating Xarkal warships and involving themselves in conflicts not their own. Many in the Concord view this as a potential threat." Sado leaned forward, her voice earnest. "With all due respect, Arbiter, we became involved because lives were at stake. The Xarkal were about to destroy the Telluri ship. Where we come from, we don't stand idly by when we can help." Grohl rumbled disapprovingly. "Noble sentiments, but naive. The galaxy is a complex place, human. Every action has consequences beyond what you can see." "Perhaps," Lysithea interjected, "but is that not precisely the fresh perspective we need? The Concord has grown stagnant, bound by ancient treaties in fear of upsetting the status quo. These humans acted where we could not, or would not." The debate raged on, with Sado doing her best to navigate the conflicting viewpoints and hidden agendas. It was clear that humanity's arrival had sent shockwaves through the established order, and not everyone was happy about it. As the meeting stretched into its 5th hour, a priority alert flashed on Sado's datapad. Her blood ran cold as she read the message. Slowly, she stood, drawing the delegate's attention. "Excellencies," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "I've just received word that a Xarkal fleet has been detected heading for Earth. They've somehow learned the location of our homeworld." The conference room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew as the delegates argued over the implications and potential responses. But Seto tuned them out, her mind already racing ahead to the looming threat. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, and now they faced their first true test. The actions of the Dauntless and her crew had inadvertently put Earth in the crosshairs of a vengeful alien force. As Sato met the eyes of her senior staff, she saw her own determination reflected back at her. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Humanity had proven it could hold its own against the best the galaxy could throw at them. Now, it was time to show the universe what they could really do when the stakes were at their highest. The diplomatic dance was over. The real battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The enemy within. The news of the Exarchal fleet heading towards Earth had thrown the U.S. Dauntless into a frenzy of activity. Captain Elena Sato stood in the ship's bustling engineering section, her face illuminated by the pulsing light of the warp core as she conferred with her chief engineer, Lieutenant Raj Kumar. "How long until we can get the quantum drive back online?" Sato asked, her voice tense with urgency. Kumar wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a smear of grease across his forehead. "We're working around the clock, Captain, but the chronoton burst did a number on the drive's primary systems. Best case scenario, we're looking at 72 hours. Sato's jaw tightened. They didn't have 72 hours. Earth didn't have 72 hours. What if we cannibalize non-essential systems? Holodecks, replicators, anything we can spare." Kumar's eyes lit up with the challenge. "That might work. It's risky, but it could shave a day off our repair time." "Do it," Sato ordered. "I want the drive operational yesterday." As she turned to leave, a violent explosion rocked the ship, nearly knocking her off her feet. Alarms blared as acrid smoke filled the air. "Report," Sato shouted into her communicator as she raced towards the source of the blast. Commander Chen's voice crackled through, tight with tension. "Explosion in the break, Captain. The Exarchal prisoners have escaped." Sato's blood ran cold. This was no coincidence, not with a Exarchal fleet bearing down on Earth. Full security alert. I want those prisoners found and contained immediately. She rounded a corner to find chaos. Crew members were scattered across the corridor, some injured, others helping their comrades to safety. At the end of the hall, the brig's doors hung open, twisted and scorched. "How did this happen?" Sato demanded as she helped a dazed ensign to her feet. Security Chief Ortiz appeared at her side, his dark features set in a grim expression. "It looks like they had help, Captain. The explosion came from outside the brig. Someone smuggled them explosives." The implications hit Sato like a punch to the gut. "We have a saboteur on board." As if to confirm her words, the ship's lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in moments later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "Bridge, report." Sato barked into her communicator. Lieutenant Okoi's voice came through, breathless and worried. "Captain, we've lost main power. Someone's initiated a ship-wide systems lockout. We're dead in the water." Sato's mind raced. With the Dauntless crippled and Exarchal prisoners loose, they were in a desperate situation. But she'd be damned if she'd let her ship fall without a fight. "Ortiz, organize search parties. I want every deck swept. Chen, get down to engineering and help Kumar get our systems back online. We need to regain control of this ship." As her crew scrambled to carry out her orders, Sato couldn't shake a gnawing sense of dread. Who was the traitor in their midst? And what was their endgame? Hours passed in a tense game of cat and mouse. The escaped Exarchal, led by their cunning commander Vexlor, proved adept at evading capture in the labyrinthine corridors of the Dauntless. Meanwhile, Sato and her loyal crew worked feverishly to undo the saboteur's work, gradually bringing systems back online. It was Chen who finally made the breakthrough. "Captain," he called, his voice crackling over the still unstable comm system. "I've managed to access the security logs. You're not going to believe this." Sato leaned over a flickering console, her eyes widening as she watched the footage. It showed one of the Galactic Concord delegates, Lysithea of the Aether Collective, secretly passing a device to one of the exarchal prisoners during an inspection of the brig. It can't be, Sato breathed. But the evidence was right there in front of her. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Multiple unauthorized access attempts in the main computer core. Okoi's panicked voice came through. They're trying to download our database, including Earth's coordinates. Sato's blood ran cold. If the Karakul got their hands on that information, Earth would be defenseless. She made a split-second decision. All hands. This is the captain. Security teams to the computer core immediately. Repel boarders at all costs. She grabbed a phaser from a nearby weapons locker and set off at a run, determination etched on her features. As she raced through the corridors, she rallied every crew member she passed. This was it, the moment that would decide not just the fate of the Dauntless, but potentially the future of Earth itself. They reached the computer core to find a firefight already in progress. Vexlor and his Arcol warriors had barricaded themselves inside, while security teams exchanged fire from the hallway. And there, in the midst of it all, was Lysithea, her ethereal form shimmering as she worked feverishly at a console. Lysithea, Sato shouted over the din of battle. Why? Why betray us like this? The aether being turned, her galactic eyes filled with a cold light. You humans are too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. Your drive, your determination, it would upset the careful balance we've maintained for millennia. The Exarchal are crude, but they serve a purpose in culling upstart races. Sato's grip tightened on her phaser. We won't go quietly. Humanity's fought too hard, come too far, to be culled by the likes of you. With a cry of defiance, Sato led the charge into the computer core. The next few minutes were a blur of phaser fire and hand-to-hand combat. Sato found herself grappling with Vexlor, that exarchal commander's strength nearly overwhelming her. But humans had a knack for surviving impossible odds, and Sato was no exception. With a move born of desperation and countless hours of combat training, she managed to flip Vexlor over her shoulder, sending him crashing into a bank of computers in a shower of sparks. As the last of the exarchal fell and Lysithea was restrained, Sato allowed herself a moment to catch her breath. They had done it. Against all odds, they had foiled the plot and protected Earth's location. But as she looked around at her battered crew and the damaged ship, Sato knew this was just the beginning. They had unmasked a conspiracy that went far beyond a simple alien attack. The galaxy was a far more dangerous and complex place than they had ever imagined. As she helped Chen secure the prisoners, Sato's mind was already racing ahead. They needed to warn Earth, to prepare humanity for the challenges that lay ahead. And somehow, they needed to find allies in this vast, often hostile universe. The Dauntless had weathered this storm, but Sato knew in her gut that greater trials were yet to come. Humanity's true test was just beginning. Humanity's stand. The U.S. Dauntless limped through space, its hull scared and systems barely functional. But despite the damage, there was an air of grim determination aboard the ship. Captain Alina Sato stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as Earth slowly grew larger. They had made it home, but they were far from safe. Status of the exarchal fleet? Sato asked, her voice tight with tension. Lieutenant Okoi consulted her sensors. Still on approach, Captain. ETA 6 hours. Earth's defenses are mobilizing, but... She trailed off, the implication clear. Earth's fledgling space force was no match for the battle-hardened Exarchal Armada. Sato nodded grimly. And our guests. Commander Chen spoke up from his station. The Concord delegates are secure in their quarters. Lysithea and the Exarchal prisoners are in the brig under heavy guard. Good, Sato said, because we're going to need them. Her senior staff exchanged confused looks. Captain, Chen asked hesitantly. Sato allowed herself a small, determined smile. We're going to show the galaxy what humanity is really made of. And to do that, we're going to need every asset at our disposal, even our enemies. Over the next few hours, as Earth's governments were briefed and panic spread across the planet, Sado put her audacious plan into motion. It was risky, potentially suicidal, but it was also quintessentially human, adaptive, creative, and utterly unpredictable. In the brig, Sado faced down Vexilor, the exarchal commander. "Your fleet is coming," she said without preamble. "But I'm offering you a chance to be on the winning side." Vexilor's reptilian features twisted in a sneer. "You're beaten, human. Why would I join the losing team?" "Because," Sado leaned in close, her voice low and intense, "I'm about to show you why underestimating humanity is the last mistake your people will ever make." Meanwhile, in the conference room, the remaining Concord delegates watched in stunned silence as Sado laid out her plan. "You want to what?" Grohl, the stone-like being, rumbled in disbelief. "Unite the exarchal prisoners with our crew to defend Earth," Sado repeated calmly. "With Lysithia's aether technology and your support, we can turn the Dauntless into a Trojan horse. We'll infiltrate the exarchal fleet and take it down from the inside." Schickstal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "This is madness. You would trust your sworn enemies." Sado's eyes flashed. "We'll trust in their desire to survive. And in doing so, we'll show the galaxy that humanity's strength lies not in our weapons, but in our ability to turn enemies into allies." As the delegates argued, Sado's crew was already in motion. Lieutenant Kumar worked feverishly to integrate Lysithia's aether tech into the Dauntless's systems, while Security Chief Ortiz drilled the human crew and exarchal prisoners in joint combat maneuvers. It was a crazy gambit, fraught with potential betrayal at every turn. But as the hours ticked down, and the exarchal fleet approached, something remarkable happened. The shared danger, the sheer audacity of Sado's plan, began to forge unlikely bonds. Human engineers worked alongside exarchal technicians, marveling at each other's ingenuity. Vexilor, grudgingly impressed by Sado's boldness, began offering tactical advice against his own fleet. As the newly modified Dauntless rose to meet the oncoming armada, Sado felt a swell of pride in her crew, human and alien alike. This, she realized, was humanity's true strength. Not their technology or their fighting prowess, but their ability to adapt, to inspire, to bring together disparate forces in the face of overwhelming odds. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries as one of the most unconventional engagements in galactic history. The Dauntless, cloaked in ether technology, slipped past the exarchal fleet's outer defenses. Boarding parties of humans and reformed exarchal struck at key ships, sowing confusion and disarray. Meanwhile, Earth's defenders, bolstered by hastily shared alien tech and tactics, put up a fierce resistance. The exarchal, expecting an easy conquest, found themselves mired in a chaotic, unpredictable battle on multiple fronts. In the thick of the fight, Sado found herself back-to-back with Vexilor, fighting off loyalist exarchal troops. "Still think we're on the losing side," she shouted over the din of battle. Vexilor's toothy grin was fierce. "I begin to see why the Concord feared you, human. Your people are formidable." The tide turned, faced with an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once, that turned their own tactics and even their own people against them. The exarchal fleet began to falter. Ship after ship fell to the combined might of the human-led coalition. As the last exarchal dreadnought surrendered, a stunned hush fell over the battlefield. Against all odds, humanity had stood its ground and emerged victorious. In the aftermath, as the Dauntless orbited a grateful Earth, Sado found herself once again facing the Concord delegates. But this time, the atmosphere was drastically different. "Captain Sado," Sixtel began, his tone formal but tinged with respect, "the Galactic Concord has reevaluated its position on humanity's place in the galaxy." Grohl nodded, his stony features somehow conveying admiration. Your actions have demonstrated a level of innovation, adaptability, and unifying leadership that we have not seen in millennia. We would like to formally invite Earth to join the Concord, Lysithea added. The ether being, chastened by her earlier betrayal, now seemed genuinely impressed by humanity's potential. Sato allowed herself a small smile. On behalf of Earth, we're honored by the invitation, but I think recent events have shown that humanity's role might be a bit different than traditional membership. She gazed out at the stars, her eyes alight with the promise of the future. We've proven that we can be a force for positive change in the galaxy, a bridge between disparate races, a catalyst for innovation, a defender of those in need. The delegates exchanged glances, and Sixtal nodded slowly. Perhaps a special advisory role. Your unique perspective could be invaluable in helping the Concord adapt to a changing galaxy. As the negotiations continued, Seto couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and excitement. Humanity had faced its trial by fire and emerged stronger than ever. They had shown the galaxy not just their strength in battle, but their capacity for diplomacy, forgiveness, and unity in the face of overwhelming odds. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, more threats, both from without and within. But Sato knew that whatever the universe threw at them, humanity would face it head-on, with ingenuity, determination, and an unwavering belief in their potential to shape a better future for all sentient beings. As the Dauntless prepared for its next mission, this time as an official envoy of both Earth and the Galactic Concord, Sato looked at her diverse crew, now including former enemies turned allies. She smiled, knowing that they were ready for whatever adventures awaited them among the stars. Humanity had taken its place on the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same again.